This is Julie Sprankles with Charleston Home and Design Magazine, and we are here today at the Folly Beach home of Mr. David Boatwright, and we are joined by David Hill from Verdi Company. Now, Mr. Boatwright, I understand that you had kind of a unique role in this home. Instead of just being a homeowner, you took a more active role and actually played a part in the design. Can you tell me a little bit about what you hope to get out of this project?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously we were doing this as a second home, and I designed it from the get-go, and I wanted to do an energy efficient structure that also would withstand a hurricane, you know. And so I jumped in. I mean, that's the only way to do it, because the construction is so difficult and so many things go wrong that you have to sort of turn your brain off in order to proceed every time. I've done quite a few houses, a few of my own that I've sold or kept or whatever, but and a few for others as well.
So this isn't just necessarily a hobby of yours, it is something that you pursue.
Right. I have a background in architecture. I make my living these days primarily as an artist. I'm not a licensed architect, but I did study architecture for a few years, and I worked in a firm or two. And I've always kept up an interest, but I sort of bounced around in my career and did some art and some design.
Well, then that kind of brings us to this distinctive collaboration between the two Davids here. David Hill, you own Verdi Company with your wife Amy, and you guys are a full-service design firm specializing in...
Well, we're a design and construction firm specializing in green building.
And on this project, you weren't doing solely the design. Tell me a little bit about this collaboration and how it works with working with another designer.
Well, it was interesting the way we met. I was working on the construction of a house down on Mary Street, and we're backing this trailer up a long, skinny alleyway full of SIPS panels, and I got 15 different people yelling at me, and all of a sudden one of them's yelling at me saying, "Well, are you the SIPS guy, the structural insulated panel guy?" I said, "Yeah, I am, but can you give me a minute?" And so we finished backing the trailer up, and here's David Boatwright down there, and he said, "Well, I got this house I'm doing out on Folly. I've got a steel frame up and a pile of SIPS panels. Can you come out and take a look at it for me?" So that day, we met, and I drove right out and followed you out here. And it was interesting because, of course, as David said, he'd already come up. He had a very mature design that was already in construction. And so I think on our construction side, obviously, we could help him by putting the structural insulated panels up around the steel frame. But also on the design side, I think it helped that we were sensitive to what his goals were in terms of some of the volumes in the space that you see here and the design that he ultimately envisioned. We were able to keep that in mind even at the front end of construction.
Now, since you met over SIPs, can you actually describe for our listeners what SIPs are?
SIPs are structural insulated panels, and it's a composite sort of sandwich panel. It's a high strength plywood skin, very high density foam core, and then another high strength plywood skin. It's bonded together almost like an ice cream sandwich or something. And that is the framing, it's the insulation, it's the sheathing, it's the sound deadening. It does all those things at once. It's very strong. It goes up fairly quickly. It's a wonderful material. I said we specialize in green design and green building. For us, it's the greatest bang for the buck because it allows us a lot of those benefits. The speed of construction, the strength. It's very tight home, very well insulated home, so we can look at things like reducing the size of the heating and air conditioning system. It's a great system.
Now, Mr. Boatwright, clearly you had your SIPs already here when David Hill came out to see you. Right. Was that something that was important from the beginning for you to have SIPs involved?
Well, I mean, I just did my research and figured that this really was the best way to go. And then when I checked into the price of having SIPs, and there was a local company making them and everything, and I realized it was no more really than stick framing. And it had a lot of advantages, which he just enumerated. But it was kind of funny because I had the steel structure, I had the SIPs, and I was talking to carpenters and saying, well, here's what I want to do, you know. And I was just trying to cobble together a crew. And there'd be people that would be sort of interested, but they would say, well, you know, we've never done that. We don't really, you know. And and that's when I bumped into David, and it turned out he had experience. Not only had experience, he had a couple of crews, and these guys were very good. They came out and they did it right, But what was the question?
I think you answered it. So clearly it was a fortunate meeting.
Yeah, right.
Good thing he followed you back.
Right.
Now, one thing I wanted to touch on, standing in this really, really wonderful open living space, there's so much natural light. There are these beautiful windows everywhere. Were there any kind of issues you faced with those in the design and installation, or anything you want to explain about that?
Yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about SIPs is you can build a solid wall, and you decide. And as it was going up, I would walk around and say, well, I kind of like the view of the trees this way, and so, I had windows on the drawings, and I kept to that more or less, but I also modified it, adjusted it, because you can just decide, well, I want a window here. Just cut a hole in it, frame it out, stick your window in. Now, what also works well with that is this: I use this storefront commercial system, and they, instead of paying for custom windows or having these sizes figured, they just come out, okay, here's your opening.
Right.
They boom, 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 cut this little aluminum frame, install it, bring the glass out the following week, and it's nice 3/4 inch at least insulated glass. And it's economical. Right. I mean, the cost in the installation of this system, including all the doors, was really cheap. It was just, and I like it. It's like no maintenance.
Right. And on the design side, for me, it's always fun to have a collaborator, and I think you'd feel the same way, because it was kind of fun. We got the SIPS walls up, and then we'd walk around and literally do the whole film director thing and say, what do you think about here and here? And on one hand, I knew what the structural properties of SIPs were and the rules we had to follow, and on the other hand, we had a lot of freedom within that because we had the steel frame here too. So
right.
It worked out
the
well.
Steel frame is, SIPs on their own are structurally, solid, but this house is very simple. I was just built almost like a post and beam structure. It's just a steel skeleton, and then covered this, just put a skin around it and left all the framing inside. It's just obvious to anybody, but it's not really done that way very often. Right. It just seemed to make sense, and so I had no break, with the steel.
No thermal break, you mean?
No thermal break.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the steel, I imagine there were some unique construction issues with that. Do you guys care to elaborate a little bit?
Oh, sure. It was a lot of fun working with David, and sometimes even the problems in retrospect can be kind of funny, and this one I thought was funny very soon afterwards. We got out here and we started putting up the panels, and of course we put up the floor panels, and then we started on the first floor and we're putting the wall panels around the outside of the steel frame. And we started getting on the second floor and we realized that the panels weren't lining up correctly with the steel frame. And we finally determined that the steel frame, he's got 6 steel frames as you go back through the house, that the frames were a little misaligned to each other. So we called the structural steel guy back out and we said, well, what are you going to do about this? And he spent the first day, 2 or 3 hours arguing with us about how it wasn't his problem and how our guys must have pushed the steel frame out of square, or the panels were warped or something like that. I don't know. He had 1,000 excuses, and we said, well, let's just table this discussion. We'll meet again tomorrow. So he comes out the next day, and he just starts into this whole thing again. I finally just said, or one of us finally just said, well, what's it going to take to fix it? Is it an easy fix or not? He goes, oh, yeah, it's real easy. And he grabs this wrench out of the back of the truck, and he had a little laser thing, and it took him 45 minutes to fix the problem.
He was able to adjust it, and got it pretty good, but we already had some panels up, so he couldn't totally. But it's it might be in a 60-foot house, it might be half an inch off, but it should have been perfect.
Right.
It could have been perfect, and so it's those are the little things you live with and you get over because they really in the end don't matter that much. But
Well, I'm sure to you designers, it's something that's noticeable, but to the rest of the world, we're thinking, oh, this looks great.
It really isn't noticeable, but I know it's there,
Well, this isn't really your typical Folly Beach home, but yet it really works. I mean, it feels to me like a place where you'd have people come in and off the beach, surfer come in, throw their surfboard on a rack or something.
Flip-flops and
yeah, exactly. Kind of kick back. Was this the kind of project that you would recommend for other people that you see developing here along the beaches?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from just a structural point of view, I wager I've got one of the stouter houses out here, in the event of a Category 4, this will be okay. In fact, I got a special dispensation on my windows because it met certain commercial standards. Your typical store does not have to have shuttered windows and all that, but now all residential stuff either has to have what do you call it, the
storm shutters?
Well, the shutters, but the windows, the DPI.
Oh yeah, design pressure. Right.
And I got away without having to do that here, which would have been quite expensive, and because in the event of a big hurricane, it will blow my windows out, say, but the house will be here.
Right.
And so it's rated a different category from most residential projects.
Mr. Hill, are you seeing more homes along the coastline and here in Charleston? Obviously, as Mr. Boatwright mentioned, not only is the house energy efficient and beautiful, but it is safe, which is a big consideration for people here along the coast. Do you see kind of a progression more now towards these kind of green homes that are also hurricane friendly?
Well, I think so. I think the code changed recently, the structural code changed. So whether you wanted to be hurricane friendly or not, now you have to be. And I don't know why anybody would build a house anywhere near the beach and not be hurricane friendly, even if the code didn't require it.
Hurricane unfriendly.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we don't want to be friendly. Yeah, we want to oppose the hurricanes. What we find with green building and green design is that there are a lot of other factors that contribute to the cost of construction over and above whether it's green or not. And if we enter into this, as David did on this home that he designed, with green at the front end, thinking about it. So he started weighing the cost of the structural insulated panels, for example, versus what that would do to the sizing of his heating and air conditioning equipment, versus what that would allow him the flexibility to do with the windows. If you really start to look at it from a holistic sense, absolutely, that's what we see in our business. And really, that's why people come and seek us out. I mean, we met by accident almost because he happened to see us, but I think if he dug a little deeper, we might have run into each other, anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think that's why people come to our company, is because we do have that sensitivity to the environment and to doing an ecologically and energy-friendly home. And so that, for example, we're doing one out on Deweese right now, and it will be a very strong but also a very energy efficient home. They're going to have photovoltaic panels. They've got a lot of great things going on, and really within their sort of traditional budget, we're able to do a lot of different things. So yeah, we see that a lot.
Well, here we are in the wonderful, expansive upstairs hallway, and we are concluding our tour of Mr. Boatwright's Folly Beach home. David Hill with Verdi Company has been with us this entire time. David, if someone wants to reach out for you design and construction of their home, how can they get in touch with you?
The best thing to do is to go to our website, which is theverdicompany.com. And that has all the contact information on it, as well as a lot of information about what we do, our projects, philosophy, that kind of stuff.
Now, Mr. Boatwright, not only you said you dabble in design, you do this for other people, but you also are an artist. If someone wants to reach out to you after they see the pictures of your home, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I think I'm in the phone book, David Boatwright, and to the extent that's reliable. And my email address is luckyboyart@comcast.net. But I don't have a website, alas. But I should in the next few months.
On your next project to-do list. Right. Well, thank you guys so much for having us here. We really enjoyed the tour of your home, and I'm sure our listeners and readers of the magazine will enjoy seeing it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.